Vice President Osinbajo meets not too young to run campaigners, reiterate government's desire to support youths.
House of Representatives moves to revive textile industry.
Importance of collaboration in focus as 2018 African Land Forces Summit ends in Abuja.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we continue our conversation on the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, plus a review of the Commonwealth Games and managing phobia.
Now, the 25th biannual meeting of the Commonwealth's Heads of States and Government is underway in London.
Well, as you know, Rhoda, the meeting was officially declared open yesterday by Queen Elizabeth II at Buckingham Palace, and this is in London.
Well, Queen Elizabeth expressed happiness that the Commonwealth has expanded from 8 nations in 1952 to 53 countries presently with 2.3 billion people.
In addition, she also expressed the wish that the association would continue to offer stability and continuity for future generations.
And Kingsley, as you also are aware, President Muhammadu Buhari is amongst the 53 heads of government attending the meeting, which focuses on towards a common future.
That's right. Now, in his address, President Muhammadu Buhari identified trade and investment facilitation to generate resources for sustainable development, ease of doing business and regional integration that expands markets with safeguards against injurious trade practices from third parties, more inclusive growth with the empowerment of women and the youth. And these, he said, are factors that are capable of making business amongst Commonwealth countries a lot easier.
Now, the question is, to what steps should the Commonwealth take to achieve or to realize its objectives, ensuring a common future for the people of the member nations? This is part of the questions we intend to elicit answers to as we continue our discussion on the Commonwealth Heads of Governments meeting. I'm Rhoda Anonam, saying thank you for joining us on Good Morning Nigeria, and we are live on Africa's largest television network, the NTA.
And I'm Kingsley Osadola. I also join my colleague Rhoda in welcoming you to the program. Now, in addition to the CHOGM, which we are taking a look at again, we shall equally discuss how to manage phobia. I'm sure that Rhoda, individuals, or many individuals have certain kinds of phobias, Yeah, some are afraid of snakes, have phobia for snakes, some for rodents, such as rats, others for spiders.
For some people, heights.
Absolutely, and others for flying.
Yeah.
Yes, and others for darkness, or just being in open spaces. That's one issue, of course, we shall also be taking a look at. That's to say, how do you manage your phobia? And in addition to those two topics, we shall equally take a look at the just concluded Commonwealth Games. The Games, of course, took place in Gold Coast, and that, of course, is in the Pacific. Of course, Nigeria came 9th on the medals table at the end of the proceedings. So we'll take a look at all of that in our discussion segment this morning.
And as usual, we'll bring to you our regular companion segment, and that includes the newspaper review. We've got business, sports, foreign, and entertainment news. As always, the news comes first, and Kende Olaleye has the news this morning. Kende, I think we're both in purple this morning, looking good. Anyway.
Good morning, Rhoda. Good morning. Here is the news. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has reiterated the confidence of the Buhari administration in the ability of youth to take the country to a greater height. The administration, he says, remains committed to supporting young Nigerians in different areas, including politics. He was speaking when a delegation of not too young to run campaigners visited him in the villa to canvass support of the federal government.
I don't have any problem with people running for office at any age. As a matter of fact, I've benefited from being very young and being able to.
Here a few weeks ago, when we marched to the villa to deposit our letter of demand, calling on the executive and the Buhari-led administration to answer the call of history by assenting to not too young to run. And so we've just come here to place that demand on the need to assent to this bill.
Senate plenary on Thursday commenced with heightened security presence and a lengthy executive session by the legislators, which was presided over by Deputy Senate President Ike Kuramadu. Following closed session, the Deputy Senate President made some key statements relating to the disturbance.
I want to register deep appreciation to you, my colleagues, for your understanding and maturity in the face of flagrant provocation. I want to also especially appreciate the leadership and members of the House of Representatives, the management and staff of the National Assembly. Ugly and provocative as the event of yesterday was, it shows that the entire nation and the world stood together in total condemnation of the ugly drama.
The textile industry is one sector that is capable of creating more than 1 million jobs for Nigerians. This is the position of members of the House of Representatives as they pass for second reading a bill for an act to establish Nigerian Textile Industry Trust Fund.
We tackle the unemployment, promote made in Nigerian goods, and even contribute to the GDP.
Once you don't have the technology of adding value to your product, you are going to be perpetually and eternally tied to the apron string of the developed world.
What steps can we take to get this market competitive? Because the consumption of textile materials, especially in the northern part, is huge.
Nigeria's military collaboration with multinational joint task force and support from friendly nations like the United States has been instrumental to the successes achieved in the fight against Boko Haram. The Minister of Defense, Mansour Danali, said this in a message to the closing ceremony of the 2018 African Land Forces Summit in Abuja.
We must have been aware of the various collaborative initiatives and concerted efforts that have been put in place not only to ensure a secure Africa, but to also attain global security.
Those of us who wear military uniforms have committed ourselves to a life of service, defending and protecting others. Let us never forget the tremendous faith and confidence that has been placed in us.
The People's Democratic Party says it is willing to form alliance and work with like minds ahead of the 2019 general election. National Chairman of the PDP, Uche Secondus, stated this during the 79th National Executive Committee meeting of the party.
We can't do it alone, and so you must join us to make the necessary contact. Let's open up conversation. Let's open up discussion with groups, interest groups, political parties.
Whatever sacrifice needs to be made, whatever accommodation needs to be made, you have to make it.
And that's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kingsley and Rhoda after this break.
Unemployment, notably youth unemployment, features strongly in our party's manifesto. We intend to attack the problem frontally through revival of agriculture.
The 30K is going a long way. Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
Reorganized, trained, and fully equipped, We are the new, improved Nigeria Police Force. We fight crime. We bust syndicates. Whatever the crime, wherever the hideout, the Nigeria Police Force will get you busted. Stop kidnapping, armed robbery, murder, pipeline vandalism, and other criminal activities. Be productive. Be security conscious. Join the police force to secure your life and property. This message is from the Nigeria Police Force Public Relations Department.
Go to my son's room and get pregnant.
Countless women suffer under the misconception that when a woman is childless or fails to conceive within the clock time set for her by family and society, then it must be the woman's fault.
Enough is enough. She must leave my son's house.
So childless women suffer the pains of childlessness, and they also suffer the rejection of family and blame of society. This problem is placed side by side with the issue of those who sell their babies.
You did what? I don't sell my picking.
In this episode, titled Childless Wives, join us this week as a rib-cracking comedy takes a semi-comic look at issues of childlessness and child harvesting.
I want to get pregnant as easily as you do it. And I swear by my life, I will die for my child.
Over and out. Brought to you by Glow.
The largest data network, Glow Unlimited.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the daring and invincible Louis the Mosquito. Responsible for 200 malaria cases all on its own. Is there anything that can kill Louis? Morphine!
Presenting Mortise Power. Its powerful formula kills malaria mosquitoes fast. So get Mortise Power Guard.
Caring for the patients of typhoid and diarrhea is our responsibility. And these illnesses are often spread due to eating with unclean hands. So I'd recommend Dettol, as it protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs. That's why I want to be Dettol sure. Dettol, be 100% sure.
Dettol soap is now also available for 100 Naira only.
You're welcome back, and if you've just joined us, it's Good Morning Nigeria. In the world of business, federal government and other stakeholders meet in Abuja to validate UNIDO's new country program for industrial development in Nigeria, covering the period of 2018 to 2022. We'll get more details now from our business news correspondent, Joy Uzo.
It's good to have you join me on Business News. I am Joy Uzo. The federal government and stakeholders in the industrial sector have validated the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO's new country program for inclusive and sustainable development in Nigeria. The new country program, expected to take effect from July 2018 to 2022, is the second in the series of UNIDO's support to Nigeria. The CP, which is aimed at enhancing Nigeria's drive towards inclusive and sustainable industrial development, is aligned with the priorities of the federal government as outlined in the Nigerian Vision 2020, the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, ERGP, and the Nigeria Industrial Revolution Plan, NIRP. The country program, with a budget of $15 million, is expected to be funded through financial mobilization by UNIDO with support from the federal government.
And based on the support from the government of Nigeria, we'll be able to attract more resources.
Presently, we have quite a lot of industries that are down, but with the initiative that also includes special economic zone, in which there are quite a lot of activities that will be going on, quite a lot will be achieved. The industrial production capacity will increase.
And to the equities market, the Nigerian Stock Exchange closed Thursday's trading on a positive note as the NSE All-Share Index appreciated by 0.25% to close at 40,874.09 basis points. Over 740 million shares valued at 8.9 million naira were traded by investors on the floor of the markets, higher than the shares traded previously. Oando, Courtview, and Eternal Oil led the gainers table with a percentage gain of 4.82%, 5.00% and 4.82%. First Aluminium Mobil and First City Monument Bank topped the losers chart, while FCMB, Ohando and Zenith Bank emerged as most traded equities with a volume of 204 million, 185 million and 70 million. And on that note, we wrap up business news and Good Morning Nigeria. Many thanks for watching. I am Joy Uzo.
Thank you very much, Joy Uzo, there for the business news. Next for us, we'll go to the front pages of today's newspapers for a review of the headlines.
Our regular newspaper reviewer, Bayo Toyobe, is in the studio. Bayo, good morning.
Good morning, Rhoda. Good morning, Kinsley.
Bayo, good to see you. It's a Friday. And all right, Rhoda, let's begin with you. Of course, there are stories still trending on the disturbance that occurred on Wednesday in the Senate. Now, the lead story for the Daily Sun newspaper focuses on that. It says, as stolen maize is found, that's the kicker. Senate summons DSS boss and Inspector General of Police. With two riders, wants explanation on collapse of security. The gang attacked Parliament. And another rider that says, how plot to impeach Saraki and Ekweremadu was foiled. That story is in greater detail on page 6. For the Blueprint newspaper, it's also the lead story, and it has a kicker. Maize snatching drama. Court stops police and SSS from arresting Omo Agege. And Senate summons IGP and DSS boss, and maize found under Abuja flyover. That story, again, is in greater detail on page 6 of the Blueprint newspaper. Now, there's another story that is common to the two front pages that I have. And I'm sure Rhoda will also have that. It's an earpiece beside the nameplate of the Daily Sun newspaper. It says, I never said all youths are lazy. And that's according to President Muhammadu Buhari. And that story, of course, is coming from the ongoing Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting taking place in London. I never said all youths are lazy. The President, that story is in greater detail on page 8. And then if you come to the Blueprint newspaper, that story is also below the nameplate. And it has a twist. It says, PDP to Buhari, Nigerian youth not lazy. But the writer says, criticism not targeted at all of them. That's according to the presidency.
And of course, same story is trending on the dailies that I have this morning. First is the Nigerian pilot. On the Nigerian pilot, it says the lead story, Togs invasion. National Assembly wants own police as Senate summons IGP and DSS boss. That's a rider to that story. Togs invasion, NAS wants own police. As Senate summons IGP and DSS boss. That's the story that's the lead for the Nigerian pilot, and it's trending on page 4 for greater details. Now, on the Punch, it's the same story that's running. It says Senate summons IG, DSS boss over maize theft. And with two riders there, lawmakers to probe security personnel on duty. Court stops police, DSS from arresting Omo Agege. Now, the story Kingsley read earlier is also trending here. It says on the Nigerian pilot, back to the Nigerian pilot now. Those are the foot of the paper. It says mischievous Nigerians twisted Buhari's statement on youth. Mischievous Nigerians twisted Buhari's statement on youth, says presidency. Now, let's begin with these two running stories, or these two trending stories. Of course, the statement of the president that was twisted by some people, and then, of course, the maize that has been returned.
Thanks. Let's start with the maize story. The maize has been found. It was snatched in broad daylight, and the police returned it to the clerk of the National Assembly yesterday. Meanwhile, the Senate has summoned the Inspector General of Police and the DGSSS to report to the Senate next week to brief them about situation, about investigation. Meanwhile, the Deputy Senate President has said that the Senate will not be intimidated, as it will never fear to legislate, neither will it legislate out of fear. He says a big institution like the National Assembly deserves to have its own police, aside from the Sergeant at Arms. Meanwhile, the Deputy Force Police PRO, SP Aremu Adenira, says that the maize was found abandoned under a bridge around City Gate, And so far, no arrest has been made. So earlier reports indicating that about 5 persons had been arrested is not confirmed. Meanwhile, there's been reactions from the People's Democratic Party. National Chairman Uche Sekondu says that the thieves should be tried for treason, and he says that it is an assault on the democracy and a coup against the legislature. The Social Democratic Party also has described the vision of the Senate as a threat to democracy, and it should not be allowed to be politicized by over-ambitious politicians who are, or their surrogates, who are determined to derail democracy. Meanwhile, an FCT High Court has yesterday granted an ex-party order restraining the Director General of the State Security Services, Inspector General of Police, from arresting Senator Ovie Omoh-Agege. The Attorney General, Inspector General of Police, Commissioner of Police Abuja, DG, SSS are the respondent, and the court has sought to restrain the respondent from arresting and detaining him, and also from interfering in his personal liberty. You recall that Senator Ovie Omoh-Agege was suspended for 90 days in spite of his pending suit at an Abuja court. In fact, it's trending on the social media, and people are lamenting that Senator Ovie Omoh-Agege is the son of a judge who jailed a notorious armed robber at the Firearms Tribunal, Francis Anini, in Benin, and ironically, he's now being spotted in this current debacle.
Well,
I'm talking about the issue about the youths. Yes. The presidency has clarified.
Just before you go to the youth issue, incidentally, I covered the trial in December 1986 of the robbery tribunal that tried Lawrence Anini and the other gangs. Anini wasn't tried by Justice Omoh-Agege. That was by Justice Ambisa. But DSP Yamu and others were tried by Justice Omoh-Agege, the father of Omoh-Agege, that's Senator Omoh-Agege, who also was Secretary to the government of Delta State government. That's right.
Right. Now, talking about the youth, the presidency has clarified that the comment made by President Muhammadu Buhari at the Commonwealth Business Forum did not refer to all youths in the country. Special Assistant to the President on Media, Femi Adesina, says the president's remarks was about a lot of the youth and had been twisted by typical manipulators to make mischief to mean all of the youth. And he says such sudden transmogrify is mischievous and unconscionable. There has been several reactions from youth across the group. You know, our youth are very potent. They constitute about 75% of our voting population. And on the social media, they have been so incensed. And in fact, they now have what they call a hashtag lazy Nigerian youth. And it's already trending. However, politicians are said to have been the ones who are now hiring these ones to overshadow what the president said. Well, this is a 2019 election period, so any statement you make is just like an egg. It can break, and once it is broken, politics and politicking can subject it to various meanings.
The advisor to the president of media and publicity has issued his own statement clarifying what the president said, and also, of course, lampooning the twist that has been given to the statement by the president. I mean, it would be unthinkable for the president to say that all disparage all Nigerian youths. I mean, we do know that there are some problematic young persons in our midst. There's no doubt about that. All right, Rhoda, let's return to the headlines.
Now, let's quickly look at some of the other stories trending. If you go to the foot of the Punch, it says appeal court freezes Fayoshe's bank account. That's trending also too. It's on page 9 of the Punch. Also, let's quickly go to the Nigerian pilots. Very quickly, the pilots. All right, just at the foot of the paper there, it says that Suki Gate made 2 claims of ill health, doubtful, says Justice Abang, and Katsina State government threatens to seal Glow site over tax default. Kokorocha imposes the 3,000 naira levy on emo adults. All right, those are the stories trending this morning on the Nigerian pilot and, of course, the Punch. Kingsley.
That's right. Let's return to the Daily Sun and then Blueprint before we take the editorial. Now, right there at the foot of the front page of the Daily Sun, there's a headline: Herdsmen and farmers clashes have claimed 257 this year, and the story is attributed to the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. The story is in greater detail on page 39. And Buhari showing card governors to grace IPI Congress in Abuja, that's on page 8. And Lotus list. Again, Secondus dares federal government to go to court. That's on page 7. Let's return to the Blueprint newspaper, and then we take two stories from there. It says, that's below the photograph. It's a photograph you see there is of the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting that's taking place in London. Of course, right there in the middle is the Queen of England. Now, below that, you have a window of headlines. Reps want artificially ripened fruit sellers prosecuted. Reps want artificially ripened fruit sellers prosecuted. That story is on page 5. And then rampaging soldiers, in quote, that's an allegation now, set Benue community ablaze. That's on page 9. And on page 8, appeal court freezes Fayoshe's account. Bayo.
Well, the appeal court story, you will recall that the EFCC had gone to court to freeze the account of the Ekiti State governor. The court ruled against that, but the Court of Appeal has apparently confirmed that. But already indication has been given that it will be appealed to the Supreme Court. Meanwhile, the stories about crime is still very alarming. That's why the Secretary of the Government has summed up that since January to date, 257 lives have been lost to herders farmers clash. Talking about clashes too, exactly 2 weeks after the robbery in Offa, there has been another robbery at Ifaki Ekiti yesterday. And the mode was quite similar to what happened in Offa 2 weeks ago. A policeman was killed and another was injured. The injured one is now hospitalized. The Commissioner of Police, Abdullahi Chafe, has confirmed the robbery. And incidentally, the same method that was used at Offa is what obtained there. The policeman had no chance of surviving. Apparently, he was shot in the head. Also in Niger State, at Kutigi, gunmen have attacked a divisional police station. They killed a police sergeant and took away his rifle. Now, the running story. The sex for marks, you remember from the Obafemi Awolowo University, the professor has been identified as from the Department of Management and Accounting Studies, and he is to stand accountable because the university has now made a statement that he has, having regard for the gravity of the offense for which the professor is found to have premier facie liability, he is now suspended. The student too has been identified as a postgraduate student in the Department of Business Administration.
Masters of Business Administration, yes, significantly. And I think the lingering issue for them to complete the investigation is for the student to step forward and then testify or give our evidence to the committee, and I think that is very significant. Whoever is involved ordinarily should be able to persuade her to step forward. The whole idea of posting it on the social media wasn't to tantalize the public, but rather to bring to the fore, to expose the kind of sexual harassment that goes on in academia.
And I think she should be protected.
Absolutely.
I am against that, even publishing her name. They ought to have taken that because she deserves to be protected.
Protected, well, that's what, but it's important for her to also step forward and to the committee so that she can give her evidence in camera.
In camera, yes.
That's right, give her evidence in camera and then let them conclude their proceedings. Bayo, let's take the editorial now, taken from the Guardian newspaper, and it's on page 16. The headline is Amnesty for Boko Haram. That's the editorial. And very quickly, the editorial says, given Boko Haram's quasi-religious outlook, the higher scale of its atrocities, and its international connections, there have been reasons to doubt that it will easily forsake its philosophy, end its arms campaign, and surrender its weapons. The paper argues that the government is, however, very well advised to try the option of the amnesty and then offer an amnesty for past crimes to all fighters who are ready to lay down their arms and embrace peace, and that this gesture should not be twisted by any means to mean payments to Boko Haram in any form.
Well, you see, there's been controversy about amnesty, whether amnesty should be granted to Boko Haram at all for the atrocities they have committed against the nation. And there also objection to the fact that it was being compared to the amnesty granted to Niger Delta militants. As far as the arguments goes, they are not comparable. However, the argument now is that those who are willing to surrender are the ones who will benefit from that amnesty. And the editorial is suggesting that the amnesty should be for pardon for an offense, and no payment should be made to such persons.
All right, thank you very much, Bayo, for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
We'll see you again Monday morning, God willing.
Enjoy your weekend.
All right, we have 3 items for discussion this morning. Of course, the ongoing Commonwealth heads of state. We have also managing phobia, and of course, the just concluded Commonwealth Games. Those are the 3 items we're looking at. But first of all, we'll begin with the ongoing Commonwealth heads of government meeting that's going on in London as we speak. But first, let's take this background report that will set the tone for our discussion this morning, and it's being put together by our State House correspondent, Adamu Sambu.
Holding for the first time in London since 1997, the Commonwealth leaders are here to chart a pragmatic course towards ensuring that at all times the Commonwealth is responsive to global challenges and delivers a more prosperous, secure, sustainable and fair future for all its citizens.
The President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
In a unique Commonwealth tradition, the heads of state and government were ushered into the ballroom of Buckingham Palace, opened in 1856 for the official start of the biannual meeting last held in the island nation of Malta in 2015. Queen Elizabeth II, who declared the 2-day summit opened, welcomed the leaders to her own home and observed with pride as well as satisfaction that the Commonwealth, as one of the world's greatest convening powers, is a flourishing network.
It is my sincere wish that the Commonwealth will continue to offer stability and continuity for future generations. I believe we will secure a safer, more prosperous and sustainable world for those who follow us.
Describing her service to the Commonwealth as a great pleasure and honor, the Queen appealed to the leaders to appoint her son, Prince Charles, to succeed her, although the role is not hereditary. Other speakers at the opening, including the British Prime Minister Theresa May, challenged participants to take on some of the 21st century biggest questions. Mrs. May in particular noted that there have been difficulties, successes, as well as controversies, but wholeheartedly believes in the good that the Commonwealth can do.
Our responsibility as leaders is to build a Commonwealth that we can be proud to hand on to the next generation.
I pray that this Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting will not only revitalise the bonds between our countries, but will also give the Commonwealth a renewed relevance to all its citizens, finding practical solutions to their problems and giving life to their aspirations.
We believe in the Commonwealth. We have faith in the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting is a springboard for action. It is the launch pad that propels us onward, upward, forward, together.
Right, thank you very much there, Adamu Sambo, for that background report. And of course, you listened to the sentiments, the very positive sentiments expressed by the speakers at that ceremony. We have 2 guests with us here in the studios to discuss this issue in greater detail. Of course, we commenced the discussion earlier in the week with 2 ambassadors, of course, who are now retired, but at various points in the course of their ambassadorial or their diplomatic service had one thing or the other to do with the Commonwealth, either at the Commonwealth headquarters or at the headquarters of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. First, we'd like to welcome Ambassador Akin Fayomi, of course, a familiar face on Good Morning Nigeria. Ambassador Fayomi, pleasure to have you join us again.
Thank you very much.
Another familiar face on Good Morning Nigeria is, of course, Ambassador Ayo Adigun. Ambassador Ayo Adigun, pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria. Gentlemen, let's back up and then take a look at the sentiments being expressed, by the Queen, by the Secretary General as well, as the incoming head of the Commonwealth, that's Prince Charles himself, that's Prince of Wales, with regard to what they think the Commonwealth is and should be going forward in terms of common aspirations and common future for the 53 members. First, Ambassador Akin Fayomi.
Yes. Well, thank you very much, Kingsley. As the background report has noted, the Commonwealth, they are trying to re-gear, the organization up. It's been quite dormant, so to say. If you ask the average Nigerian what is the Commonwealth, it doesn't have any much impact here. But indeed, there's a lot of activities going on. The regional, the heads of state summit every two years is there to ginger up relations between the Commonwealth countries. But on the professional level also, intra-trade activities between the Commonwealth countries, youth forum, business forum, about 500 or so business people were there in London, because the periphery of the summit, always you have the youth forum, you have the business forum, you have women forum, civil society and all that. I'm sure you have gone through all those, the gamut of all that during the week. So the main aim is to sustain the Commonwealth as an organization, not just former British colonies, but something that we are at par with the EU or with the AU and all those regional multilateral organizations. I think to sustain it is quite a noble objective, and I'm sure I'm very happy that 43 or 44 of the 53 heads of state were there in London. So that shows you the interest that even all these countries have in the Commonwealth.
All right, Ambassador Ayo Adigun, let's get your thoughts. And the proceedings have been on for a couple of days now. What's your thoughts on the proceedings so far?
I think so far it's been going on fine. The agenda, the focus of the agenda on youth. Youth is becoming an issue in development, especially in Nigeria. We have the ones not too young to lead. And the percentage of the population of the youth also, even in the Commonwealth, should make every member to ginger that you need to deal with their issues, because they are not only leaders in making, but they are also the future of all nations and the Commonwealth. The issue that is there, if you look at Commonwealth is 2.24 billion people, out of which maybe about 1 billion are youth. So it's an enormous issue. They should deal with the issue of youth, empowerment, and so. For instance, this day, look at Nigeria. Our youth, most of them, they graduate into unemployment. And some of them have now discovered that having certificate is maybe merely a paper. If you don't have the core competencies to back it up, it's nothing. And you must have but you must be able to empower them to fulfill that goal. In a situation where you see thousands of our youth graduate working, I feel very bad about it, because when I remember our own time, it wasn't like this. That notwithstanding, there must be an articulated agenda by the Commonwealth to address this phenomenon. Not only that, Commonwealth has 53 member states, out of which 39 of them have all sorts of diverse problems. They are not developed. Small island states in the Caribbean. I've visited, because I've had opportunity to serve in London. I've dealt seriously with Commonwealth. So I know I've served in Commonwealth countries in Barbados, T&T, and I've been in Malaysia. If you see the Commonwealth countries that have picked up development, like Malaysia, Singapore, they are shining examples of Commonwealth countries that are succeeding today, and they are in Asia. Or no, we know the influence of Japan on the Asian axis in development issues. What I will say is that our own domestic economy or plan must be very genuine. One thing I've seen, Nigeria have lost most of the values of Commonwealth since we became independent in 1960. We have our own foreign policy directive, domestic policies, values, and systems. But if you look at it today, all these things are there. You need to see what value addition. Do we receive aid from the Britain itself is also not able to help us. Britain is quitting EU now. We have relations with EU. But on the basis, what happens when Britain quits EU. They have not addressed that issue. But the facts, when it emerges, then they will face it. In times of issue of investment, look at Nigeria, for example. If you are in Nigeria since 1960 by now, if you come now, you will not even see anything that Nigeria was a former British colony. Everything seems to have changed. Is it in infrastructure? Is it in anything we do? Is it in education? I still go to some Commonwealth countries. Their education still remains as it is. Go to Malaysia. Malaysia is helping Nigerian students now because they can afford. You can't afford education in Britain if you are outside the Commonwealth, especially like us. The value of the pound sterling to the naira is itself prohibitive. Otherwise, Britain education system, ICT base is still important. But Nigeria now have diverse its relationship. You see our students in Malaysia, they have access to ICT, the school fees is reasonable, and so on, and they get what they need. So what we begin to do is Commonwealth should have a sort of emergency agenda, not just talk shop. Another thing I want to say that I don't like about this current summit is that the Prime Minister of Britain was preaching issues that are anathema to our insensitive to our values.
Yeah, Ambassador Ayo, we'll come to that. In fact, when we discussed this subject some days ago, earlier in the week, our guests were all vehement, in objecting to that very position. But thanks a lot for what you've said. Let's bring in again Ambassador Akin Fayome. Ambassador Fayome, tell us something. First, about the attendance. You're talking about the number of heads of state who are present, amongst the 53 member countries. And then, what pointers do we have as to the capacity and intention, if you like, of the Commonwealth to reinvent itself and therefore make itself much more relevant to member states, given the plenitude of matters that are of urgent importance now to member states?
Yes, indeed. Starting from the attendance, that already shows you the need or the view of the heads of state to reinvent the Commonwealth. That's why from the 53, 44, 45 are there in London. That's enormous, Even at the AU, we have 53 also. Sometimes you have 25 heads of states and all that stuff. But when you have 43 out of 53 heads of state in London, it shows you that they attach some importance, some significance, some relevance to the Commonwealth. And I think the underlying factor is that everybody feels that Commonwealth has been playing a passive role, and that there is a need to reinvent, to use your word. And from the agenda, from what is there, towards a common future, that is the theme. That's also pregnant with meaning. That means what is the relevance of the Commonwealth in the future. So that means that they too, when I say they, I mean the Commonwealth Secretariat and everybody involved with Commonwealth, feels that it's not being active enough, and there is actually the need to reinvent it. But if you go beyond the sophistry and all that, it has some very deep meanings to Commonwealth countries. It's not just the summit. Like I said earlier on, the Business Forum brings in a lot of businessmen. About 500 are in London from across the 53. That's average of about 10, 20 businessmen from each of those countries, averagely. And that's to work on intra-Commonwealth trade, which is necessary. And according to what Ambassador Adigun earlier mentioned about UK and Brexit, and I think that's even the more reason why the UK wants to re-energize the Commonwealth, so that when they exit the EU, they have to look towards the Commonwealth now, because that's where they have a lot of values that are common, that can be shared between the countries that were former British colonies, apart from Rwanda and Mozambique. Majority are British. And there is the need to re-energize, there is the need to reinvent, there is the need to facilitate a lot of interaction among the youth, like he also said, which is a key issue. That's why they always have a youth forum anyway, in the wings of the Commonwealth Summit. So that need to reinvent, like you said, it's very much in the heart of the matter. And I think that's why heads of states from all these countries, 44 or so of them, can leave their busy schedule to be in London, specifically to re-energize the role of the Commonwealth in international affairs.
Now, you talked about trade and investment, which is very key. Of course, you have businessmen from across all the Commonwealth countries there also to discuss trade and investment. And President Muhammadu Buhari, made a comment. He said, he talked about the ease of doing business amongst Commonwealth countries. But for a country like Nigeria, where we're trying to build our own business environment to be self-reliant, how do we do this without injuring our economy?
Of course, you know that the world is a global village. There is just no way that you can be an island unto yourself. So we are not going to injure our own economy. You need to go out there to conform to standards. You need to make yourself sellable. And I know that Mr. President, being the chief marketer of Nigeria, chief diplomat of Nigeria, so his views, I'm sure he's carrying the views of the organized private sector. Those are the people that do the business, not government. Government has no business in business. So it's the OPS, and that's why the Commonwealth also encourages business forums, on the wings and all that. Because if you look at it properly, you'll find out that the percentage of intra-Commonwealth trade, that means trade between Commonwealth countries, is very low for now. People go to the EU. In fact, EU is one of our biggest partners in Nigeria. And I mean, apart from the UK itself. So how much trade do we do with Malaysia, with Philippines? I mean, with Trinidad and Tobago, with Jamaica, with even South Africa. So these are means of trying to say, look, we are here. We are open for business. Our environment is getting better. It's not perfect yet, but I think this is another forum where we can sell ourselves and say, look, guys, come over. Nigeria is here, and we are ready to do business with you.
Ambassador Adegun, your thoughts on this with regard to expanding intra-Commonwealth trade? Is it likely for the Commonwealth, or is it, well, some will say that it's desirable, but is it likely for the Commonwealth to, as it were, scale up its level of activities and now infuse intra-Commonwealth trade as a critical item on the agenda that should be encouraged, rather than what we have seen the Commonwealth engage in the past?
As you have said, maybe among the big Commonwealth countries, like Canada, Australia, New Zealand, probably talk of Pakistan, India. India is what do you call health tourism now for Nigeria, because they have developed the health sector. Nigeria, for us, in our own way, we have tried to assist some less developed Commonwealth countries with the technical course, which we promoted to them in 1987. I was in Trinidad then. Up till now, they have a lot of corpers that are assisting in Dominican Republic and so on. This is part of cooperation. But when you look at the distance, how the Commonwealth has spread, yes. I think that will be a Herculean task. The only way I will let Commonwealth remain as a talk shop for mobilizing these common challenges and hope. The issue of security, which is very germane in the contemporary world, the issue of assisting capacity building. For instance, when I was in London, we have this Commonwealth Fund for Technical Cooperation. We have the scholarship. I don't know what has befallen them now. And this helped to develop the first set of people when we became independent. And a lot of people went to Canada. Then there is free visa. There's no border.
Not anymore.
All these things are constrained to even what they are preaching. Everybody knows that the Commonwealth citizens have special, so all those things have vanished. And with all this border control, all these migration issues, it may not be too possible. But you can continue to promote that for those people who are closer to them. For instance, I know in Malaysia we have a lot of relations. You can concretize bilateral cooperation. Should be more promoted among Commonwealth countries. Why the determinant factors of Commonwealth being there as association of former colonies, reminiscences of colonial bondage, just those things. That may serve. In every 2 years, they can gather and talk and then wait for another 2 years. But within the Commonwealth countries, they need development. And I think also we have to talk about the issue of, I was trying to say, is it possible for Nigeria itself to take the bull by the horn? Because our own domestic situation, infrastructure development, and so on, is our challenges. We should be able also to promote ICT for the youth. For instance, if you go to Singapore, you immediately get to Singapore, you think you are in Britain. Look at Malaysia; they have all this infrastructure development. How do we bring all those things to other countries? Then the issue of climate change. If you go to some of these Commonwealth island states in the Caribbean, Mauritius, they are always challenged yearly. You see about $28 billion? The climate change is real. How do we assist those vulnerable Commonwealth countries? It is then I begin to see evidence that Commonwealth can remain whatever it is. But the issue is that Britain, as the colonial, it is good for us to still have that belief. But like I said, anything that will challenge and be offensive to our collective cultural values should be avoided by the Commonwealth.
All right, Ambassador Adigun, thank you very much. Ambassador Akinfami, that's a point that Ambassador Adigun has just raised. It's talked about the spatial dispersal of members of the Commonwealth, again, which is one of the bragging points of the Commonwealth itself, that there's no continent on Earth where you do not find Commonwealth members, except perhaps in the Arctic and Antarctica, where you won't find them. But in places that are habited, you'll find members of the Commonwealth. Is this a hindrance to intra-Commonwealth trade, or should Commonwealth members now cherry pick and say, all right, we want to boost our trade with, of course, Nigeria and India, they have that going, maybe Singapore, Malaysia, and several others, if there were areas that were not previously identified?
Like you said, I believe that that diversity that is actually an advantage. That means the Commonwealth is everywhere, and I think the Commonwealth Secretariat per se, is the one trying to promote or to push countries to countries bilaterally, like the ambassador said. A lot of intra-Commonwealth trade does not mean the Commonwealth itself you are trading with the Commonwealth. It's more or less bilateral trade. Nigeria, India, Nigeria, Canada, Nigeria, Jamaica, Nigeria, Singapore, for instance. So that is what the Commonwealth promotes. I'm not being an advocate per se for the Commonwealth, but I know that the main objective, is to expand the frontiers even beyond what it is now. And like you said, the Commonwealth goes to advice in every continent that you have the Commonwealth, and that itself, it's an attribute that many organizations do not have. And that also gives you that sense of belonging, that wherever you go, I have somebody who is in my organization there for me to deal with or to do business with. So I believe that, the Commonwealth, is not just the summit that we see, which of course that takes up the space, but behind the scenes, like you mentioned, they have the Commonwealth for Technical Fund for Cooperation, CFTC, which is still very, very valid. Commonwealth scholarships, which we have been enjoying for years, they are still there up to tomorrow. Some Nigerians are benefiting from that. And the scholarship takes you to either Singapore or to Canada or to Australia or to New Zealand, not necessarily to the UK. UK is just the secretariat or just the bond that binds everybody together. So these things are real.
All right, but the pertinent issue, people will often say this, is the youth question. How, in your opinion, should the Commonwealth respond to the youth question, considering that the youth question is all tied up with capacity development, tied up with migration, tied up with trade, with the economy, and joblessness?
I will be
or
glad,
shall I say jobs?
I will be glad to say it's not rhetorical that you move forward. The Commonwealth should have an important emergency fund, because the youth question is the time bomb all over, not only the Commonwealth. If they are really serious in addressing this serious issue, there must be a special section, pledge section, and with money targeted for the youth, and in all the various, Britain itself should be the leader in this issue. But I have my doubt whether they will be financial, because I know that. But the issue is that this fund, coordinated by the Commonwealth and targeted for youth, and they should intervene. and make sure these things touch the youth. Because if we are playing with the youth, we are playing with our common future. They say common future. So this is the way I look at it. There must be a special fund, if since it's on the front burner, for youth empowerment, technical assistance, how to train the youth. Britain and the important Commonwealth countries like Canada, New Zealand, who have the facilities, should tell Commonwealth members, oh, Nigeria, you have a lab. Can you bring so number of people to be trained for whatever? And this and in other countries, that is when I see the manifestation of that they intend to tackle this issue. Otherwise, Commonwealth also sits with the issue. It's a multilateral organization, sustainable development goals. Gender issues, which is okay. Then when you talk of gender, you also talk of climate change. You talk of maternal crisis and so on. These sustainable development goals also should also have a sort of committee by the Commonwealth, in which they have a fund to help to translate it into reality. Not just every 2 years you talk and go. Otherwise, the relevance will become like a talk show. But to me, the bond and the large size of the Commonwealth is still relevant for multilateralism.
All right, thank you very much. Let's get the final thoughts of Ambassador Akinfayemi. Now, President Muhammadu Buhari spoke extensively on a radical expansion of the 21st human capital development for the 21st century. He's talking about a knowledge-based economy. How can the Commonwealth assist Nigeria?
Yes. I hope the Commonwealth can say we want to assist Nigeria. The Commonwealth is assisting all the member countries, including Nigeria, indeed. But, you know, like my dear colleague already mentioned, the youth factor is the way to go. I mean, you have to tackle, the youth issues. And I think the Commonwealth is actually doing that. It's not just now. That's why they always have this youth forum. It's not just, the youth forum is an integral part of the summit every 2 years. But apart from the 2 years, it is done regularly, like even on a 2-3 times a year basis, where the youth of Nigeria compare notes with the youths of Malaysia, with the youths of Singapore, with the youth of the UK itself, thereby trying to ensure that, not just providing jobs, but to ensure that there is that common trend among the youth, which will translate into the leaders of tomorrow. So that's where it starts from. So it's not just assisting Nigeria. We need assistance yet, but so many other countries need more assistance than we do. In fact, we also give assistance through our technical aid corps to many Commonwealth countries in the Pacific and in the Caribbean. So the assistance goes round. It's not, we are big enough, not that we too are assisting.
But very quickly, Ambassador Fayemi, what's your reaction to your response to Ambassador Adegun's suggestion for the creation of a fund to address the youth question? An
emergency fund, right?
Yes, brilliant idea if they can do that. But don't forget that the Commonwealth doesn't have its own money. It is the member states that contributes every year. We have our assessed contribution. Nigeria, the big 4 or 5, New Zealand, Australia, Canada, Britain, Nigeria, India, Pakistan. Those are the big 8, more or less. We pay a lot into that. So it's a brilliant idea if that can be done. But what I know now is that they have a Commonwealth Fund for Technical Cooperation, CFTC, which of course encompasses youth, gender, civil organizations, and all that. So if they can create one specifically for the youth, brilliant.
All right, thank you very much, Ambassador Akinfayemi. Now, let's quickly take the response we're getting from our viewers via Twitter handle at NTAGMN. The first one is from Festus Akimboyewa. He says, while there have been great discussions and laudable ideas on cybercrime, malaria, free speech, girl education and trade, truth is Britain is more interested in trade after Brexit, while at the same time creating a hostile environment for Commonwealth citizens. Nigeria should beware.
And Mike Ayanko has this tweet. I would like our president to focus on the issues concerning economy, power, repatriation of the nation's looted funds, security, migration, education, and attraction of foreign investments to Nigeria. We want mutually beneficial relationships with member countries.
Well, those are the tweets that we have right now. You can continue to be a part of the other conversations we'll be having after now. We still have 2 items for discussion. But before we do that, we'd like to thank our guests who have joined us in this discussion. First of all, I'd like to thank Ambassador Akin Fayome, a former Under Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Thank you for your thoughts and time.
Thank you so much.
And also a very big thank you to Ambassador Ayo Adigun, former Nigeria's ambassador to Liberia. It's been a pleasure having you on the program this morning.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll take a break. We still have 2 items for discussion, and that's on the just concluded Commonwealth Games and how to manage phobia. We'll be back in just a moment.
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
Under no conditions whatsoever should we tolerate or excuse or justify hate speech or hateful conduct of any kind, especially where such is illegal.
There's no doubt that the resurgent push for separatism, as well as the rising cases of ethnic and religious disharmony, are all traceable to the growing phenomenon of hate speech.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
Can I see your particulars, sir?
Officer, my particulars no dey here.
In that case, you'll have to come with me to the police station.
Officer, which levels? Where I for find you something make you take arrange your weekend.
What? Offense number 1, driving without particulars. Offense number 2, trying to bribe an officer of the law.
I won't harass Nigerians or take bribe. Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Caring for the patients of typhoid and diarrhea is our responsibility. And these illnesses are often spread due to eating with unclean hands. So I recommend Dettol, as it protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs. That's why I want to be Dettol sure. Dettol, be 100% sure.
Dettol soap is now also available for 100 Naira only.
All right, you're welcome back. But if you just joined us, it's Good Morning Nigeria. We're reaching you with the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, to kickstart our conversation on phobia, here is our correspondent, Victor Azu, who sought the views of some Nigerians seeking to understand what their understanding is of phobia.
Sincerely speaking, I know some people are phobia to like cat or lizard, but sincerely speaking, I myself, I'm totally fearless, okay? I don't think I have such kind of imagination in my life, okay?
Snake or wall gecko, all those creeping things, I don't like seeing them. If I see them, I will put up enough courage to try to kill them.
I have phobia for heights, like, this going to the amusement park to take rides, roller coaster. When I'm up there, it's like the world is coming to an end. So I'm still dealing with it anyway. I believe I will overgrow it or overcome it.
I have phobia for heights and like big water and big flame like fire. Yeah, really, it haunts me. My hair raises up whenever I see big fire, big water or height around me. So I got scared of them.
My phobia sometimes is coming down. When you're in the height, coming down becomes problem. Your heart will just beat big in that order. For coming down, when I'm up, I don't have problem. But coming down, that is where the problem lies.
Thank you very much, Victor, to there on the streets trying to get the views of some Nigerians on what they understand as phobia. And joining us on this discussion this morning is Law Mefo a forensic social psychologist. Lomefo, it's good to have you join us in the program this morning.
Thank you.
And also in the studio is Dr. Olushola Ephraim Oluwanuga, a senior lecturer in psychiatry at the College of Medicine, University of Abuja, and chief consultant psychiatric at the National Hospital, Abuja. It's a pleasure to have you join us on the program.
Good morning.
And also, we would also love to introduce on the program Chinyere Ogun Udensi here. She is a chemical psychologist at the NIM Center for Wellness, Abuja. Chinyere, thank you for coming on the program.
Good morning. Thank you.
All right. So, ladies and Lomefo, we welcome again to the program. Let's start, first of all, by understanding what phobia is. Dr. Olushola, the psychiatrist, let's begin with you. What is a phobia?
Well, a phobia is an inordinate fear to a specific situation or a fear of a particular thing. The thing about phobias is that although most people tend, I mean, it was interesting watching the intro. People felt, oh, I have a phobia for this. But medically, for us to make a diagnosis of phobia, there has to be an inability to function. For example, if you have a phobia for heights, it means if you get a job to work on the 10th floor of a building, you are not going to accept that job because you can't just go there. So there has to be that level of inability to function before it reaches a clinical level.
All right, Lomefo, what is a phobia?
Yeah, the senior colleague here has, captured it. Fear is the background. But the fear factor here has to be extreme. It has to be inordinate. It has to be irrational. Right. And it has to lead to the feeling of avoidance. You don't want to be found in a situation like that. And that is where social impairment comes in. Because you are afraid of a particular thing or a particular situation, you try to avoid such a situation. So it is fear, but not fear in terms of a general anxiety, because sometimes we are just afraid, or to can't put our finger to why we are exactly afraid. But in the case of phobia, it's specific. The fear is associated with a particular thing or situation. And because it is so, what the victim here, tries to do, like I said before, is to avoid. And while trying to avoid, it leads to what we call social impairment. It means that the individual, because, okay, let me give you a few examples, and you can see the consequences. When you talk about a phobia like a glossophobia, which is the fear of a performance, speaking to an audience. You can have the best psychologist in Abuja, but he wouldn't be able to sit here because of glossophobia. Performance, he wouldn't be able to address a crowd. He can give a lecture and things like that. Look, from the voice pop, you could see the trend, the acrophobia. That is the fear of heights. You may not be able to fly, because you don't want to get up there. And if you can't fly, you can't trek or go to UK or US by bus, right? That means already you can see you're limited. You can't do much. So if you look at it from that perspective, you have social phobia, which I believe is the most debilitating. Social phobia here has to do with you even appearing, in social situations, going to parties, for example. So you can see that you're limited. Your capacity to really, live your life out to its maximum is impaired. And because it is impaired, whoever you are is not precisely who you should be.
All right, Lomefo, thanks a lot. We'll give the other guests the opportunity to also talk about different types of phobia and how this manifests. But let's bring in now Chinyere Udensi. What is a phobia from your perspective? I mean, your two other guests have given their own thoughts.
Mm-hmm. So basically, when you talk about a phobia is a type of anxiety, and it's basically characterized by excessive fear. So an irrational fear of a specific thing. That is the definition of a phobia.
All right. What types of phobia are there? I mean, the people have different kinds of phobia. We'll listen to the respondents in our Vox Pop a moment ago, but we do know that people, apart from being scared of flying, being scared of heights, you know, others can be scared of snakes, or rodents, they can be scared of open spaces, can be scared of darkness, or being left alone, and so on and so forth. But how does it, what triggers a phobia in the first instance? What are the causes?
Well, there are different theories relating to that. One of the theories is that sometime in the past, the person might have had a near miss, like somebody nearly falling from a height might then become afraid of heights, or somebody nearly having an accident or might then become almost terrified of getting into a car, things like that. But then the other theory is the learning theory. If, for example, a child sees a parent running very frantically from a lizard or a cockroach, that child will learn to think that they should be afraid of cockroaches or lizards.
Or wall gecko.
Or wall gecko. So it can be learned. It can be learned. And then also, if an experience is paired with something that is anxiety-provoking or painful, that is, somebody has an experience, and then it is tied with something negative, the person might develop what we call aversion, and that aversion may become the basis for irrational fear, which is a phobia.
But before we go on, I'd like to just clear the air on something. Is phobia related to anything spiritual? Some people say, oh, it's evil, something, you know, that is there anything like that?
Well, you know, here in our part of the world, we like to spiritualize most things. But actually, science has shown that there are parts of the brain that respond when a person has a phobia. There are specific parts of the brain, and there are medications that can treat it. So if this was something spiritual, we wouldn't
have medications.
Yeah, there will be no need to cast out the demon with regard to phobia. Let's have your take on this with regard to causative factors of phobias.
Yeah, like she said, is genetic and environmental.
When you say genetic,
yes.
Is it hereditary?
Yes, sort of, because, you know, research has shown that, you know, families that have, you know, tendencies, predispositions, their children are likely to follow suit. Okay. Again, you cannot divorce it essentially from learning, like she said also, because, you know, when you learn, you live with the experience, what you have acquired, and it's a response to a similar situation. But here, that response is maladaptive, and that is where the problem is. You see, then environmental, essentially, because I think that is the one that should concern us more. Environmental, our upbringing. Take, for instance, nyctophobia, fear of dark places. Look at those stories we were told as children, you know, spirit and all those things. You know, so why would you want to be locked up in a room when there could be a ghost? Do you understand what I'm saying? You know, so it's upbringing. You can't divorce it from that. It's there. Then you also have, because from research we have seen that women, you know, children, men, they are disposed to different forms of phobia.
Who's more disposed to phobia, men or women?
You know, differently. They are disposed to, like, for example, you know, dentophobia, you know, dental phobia, the fear of going to the dentist, is more associated with men. I don't know why. You know, but women and children are more predisposed to social phobia. And, you know, it's also related to even your social class. Because social phobia or performance, you know, phobia, you know, you are afraid because of social inadequacy, social incompetence. You feel inadequate. You don't believe you can, even though you can. You understand what I'm saying? So it has to do with upbringing. It has to do with the way you were conditioned. So if you want the child to get out of that, the adult to get out of that, we focus essentially, you know, on therapy.
Before we come to how to treat or cure, or whether a phobia is treatable or curable, let's still explore the amplitude of the causative factors. Chinyere, let's have your take on this. What are the causative? He's saying genetic, environmental, social, learning, and social. What are these? And then answer this question. I don't know whether you have a phobia, but persons who have a phobia, they just turn to jelly. You know, somebody who ordinarily is bold, you know, just becomes lily-livered. You know, if it's maybe, I don't know what your phobia is. I'm sure everybody will consider what their respective phobias are so that they don't get manipulated. So how does it happen? Suddenly you find something at the end, it's like, you know, tell us.
Yeah. I think they have touched on everything that can trigger a phobia or the ways that phobia come about. They can be genetic and they can be environmental. You see that children also tend to learn to have a certain type of phobia if a family member is exhibiting some of these things. So they learn some of these behaviors. Environmentally, you may have experienced something that you associate with fear and you begin to avoid it and then you grow with it that way. So these are some of the ways that people can develop phobias. There isn't any specific thing that we can point to that says this is exactly what causes phobia. And like so many mental health challenges, environmental and genetic factors play a role in the rise or on the start of these things.
All right, Dr. Lushala, now how if I'm around someone who has phobia for flying, for example, are there symptoms or signs, you know, you would see? It's a serious issue. Are there symptoms or signs?
You're on the flight and somebody's grabbing your heart.
That you will see and say, okay, this person has phobia for flying, or this person has phobia for heights.
Well, if a person happens to be on a flight with you and has a phobia for flying, first of all, let me say that it would even be rare, because most of the time when people have real phobia for flight, it's very debilitating. Somebody could cancel an appointment just because last minute they just couldn't bear to get on the plane. But when they get on the plane, you might find that they're breathing fast, they're sweating, they're looking nervous, clenched fists, you know, symptoms of anxiety. Sometimes they might, it has happened to me before. Somebody said, do you mind if I hold your hand as the flight is taking off, because I'm very scared. And I just calmly said, just hold on to your seat handle, yes, and hold it very tightly and breathe in and out slowly. You know, so you can actually help a person, you know. Yes, you can encounter people, but what you need to do is calm them. You don't have to become their crutch.
What is it? The brain, obviously, that responds, that triggers this irrational fear. How does it work? I mean, that's the way we have an understanding of what triggers it. To say that once you're in that situation, or you find that object, or you find the thing, then how does the brain get into gear?
Well, yes, there are parts of the brain that receive messages and become activated, because there actually have been studies that have shown that if you remove certain parts of the brain, the person may lose the phobia. The interesting thing is that when you do that, apart from losing the phobia, the person also becomes unable to recognize things that are actually dangerous. So it's a part of the brain that recognizes danger that is being overstimulated or inappropriately stimulated when the person has a phobia.
Is there an age factor in phobia? Is there a certain age beyond which, you know, you can't develop a phobia? Or is there an age at which you develop a phobia?
I know that, age is related to certain phobia, right? And as we grow through experience, we begin to also say that, look, this is irrational, right? Like flying. When you go through what we call systematic desensitization, it's a therapy developed by one Joseph Wolpe from South Africa. The idea is to expose you to the fear situation. Then you overcome it through practice. So age is certainly related to it, because when you're growing up, the certain things you thought were actually a problem. When you live through life, you discover that they are not. So you begin to adjust, modify your behavior to be in line with what is more socially acceptable. The issue is, yes, the body system activates or deactivates depending on what you are thinking. In psychology, we focus more on what you are thinking, because it's the thought process that is the problem. It's not really the phobia. It's the thought process that will tell the body how to respond. Do you understand what I'm saying? You know, in life, you either run away from things or you approach them. You know, it's either avoidance or approach.
Fight or flight.
That's it. You know, it's either you fight or you fly. You know, so that's it. So if the brain is telling you to run away, then, you know, that's the problem. You run. But if it is telling you to approach, it doesn't mean that certain mechanisms that will show heightened, you know, body readiness will not be there. But they will not be debilitating. You will be able to activate the body to the because a certain level of arousal and stress is required for performance, all manner of performance. So it is when it goes beyond the normal to begin to affect even how you function. That is where the problem comes in. And once it is specific, it becomes phobia. You can treat phobia, yes, through drugs, but in psychology, we don't bother much about drugs. We talk about therapy, behavior modification. We try to, you know, expose you. It depends on the therapist and the kind of therapy he or she is applying. But, you know, generally, is to get you to modify the way you think. That it is irrational, get you to confront that fact that the way you respond to this is irrational. That is not, it's not reasonable. For example, if a rat comes in here, you'll be surprised what will happen. You know, is that you understand that if a rat comes into the studio now, you'll be surprised, right? And you know, rat, I haven't had who rat killed. You know, apart from Lassa fever, which is not a direct attack. You know, so what I'm saying is that we can understand that rats, they are not that harmful, right? Snakes, you know, even a dead one. I'm not sure that there is any person alive that doesn't have one form of phobia or the other. You know, the issue is coping, that you're able to cope, you're able to rationalize through it to get to the point where you can live with it. It doesn't require hospitalization, but if it is persistent, you certainly need help. Help from clinical psychologists, you know, psychiatrists, you know, healthcare professionals. They are trained to help you understand this and then be able to live with it, confront it. In psychology, our concern is getting you to confront reality, not to run away from it.
All right. Thank you very much, Lord Mefo. Maybe we'll ask if there's any rat or mouse around here. let's get on. Let's bring in Chinero Goldensi again. Let's get your take on this. Earlier, there was a talk about the social phobia, for instance. You know, persons who are afraid of being found in parties or in open gatherings. Is there a relationship between phobia and shyness, or is shyness exaggerated?
Okay. Well, there is a vast difference between it. Shyness is not necessarily going to stop you from going out to see people or interact with people. But when it comes to phobia, like a social phobia, which is sometimes referred to as social anxiety, it can be quite debilitating that the person doesn't even come out of their house because they're scared that they're going to be judged, or there's a fear of the fact that people are going to look at them a certain way, and these can lead people to actually not even engage in social settings or engage in social activities, or even engage in things like going to work, going to the shopping center to get something. So there is a vast difference between being shy and social phobia.
All right, thank you very much, Chinero Goldensi. Now, Dr. Lushala, is there any way that someone could have phobia and it could, like we're talking about social phobia, we're saying that if you have some of these phobia, you might not be able to go to work, you might not be able to function properly. Is there any relationship between that and suicide? Could a person have phobia and be suicidal?
Well, it's not direct. The fact is that actually when a person has a phobia, to qualify for a phobia, part of the symptoms is that the person actually feels at that point that if they have to confront that situation or that object that they're so scared of, they actually feel that they might lose control. They actually feel that they might die. Their heart may stop. So to that extent, people feel like dying. But it's not, there's no direct link whereby people say, oh, I'm phobic and then I'm going to end my life because of this phobia. Usually if that happens, there is likely to have been probably an element of depression that was not noticed. For example, there's a large relationship between social phobia and depression. In fact, one of the drugs used to treat phobia sometimes is antidepressants, because sometimes when it's very severe, there's sometimes quite an element of depression. So that depression
is what leads
might make the person suicidal, but it might be that people might have noticed the phobia more than they notice the symptoms of depression, which a lot of people quietly carry around.
All right, Odense, tell us something. Does every human being have a phobia? That's one. And secondly, can an individual have multiple phobias? And if so, what are the consequences? In other words, you have a phobia for, you have acrophobia, you have aerophobia, you have...
Social phobia.
Yes, can an individual have more than one phobia?
It's very possible that someone can exhibit more than one phobia. When we look at phobia, we look at 3 specific categories. There's one we call specific phobias, where people are scared of things like rats or the snakes or spiders or, you know, certain specific elements. Then we look at more of the complex phobia, which is the social phobia, the social anxiety, or the agoraphobia. That's the fear of being in an open space and the fear of feeling like you cannot escape when something happens to you in an open space. So definitely people can have more than one type of phobia. Some can be simple and some can be complex.
And then, does every individual have a phobia?
Well, we can't necessarily say every individual has a phobia, but some people can be scared of certain things. It doesn't necessarily have to develop into a phobia. Sometimes with phobias, they may not be such a big deal because you find that everyone has a way of coping. You know, it doesn't really affect their life like that. But for other people, it can be quite severe that it greatly impacts on their ability to function.
All right, Dr. Lushola, as we round off, is phobia treatable, or is it something you treat? Is it treatable, first of all? And if it is treatable, is it something you treat or is something that you just manage?
Well, let me first of all, again, just emphasize this, that phobias need, for a person to qualify clinically as having a phobia, there must be some impairment in function. We all have things we're scared of, but phobias don't occur in more than, probably in Africa, the statistics are 2 to 5%. In America, the statistics are 5 to 8% of people have remarkable symptoms. Now, is it treatable? Yes, it's treatable. And the mainstay is psychological treatment. You try to get the person to recognize what is causing the fear. You try to help them to, you know, become associated with it. Incidentally, humor has now been found to be very useful in addressing phobia. I mean, somebody is scared of something, joke about it, let them see that thing in a funny context. So it's treatable, and if psychological methods fail, then you may need to give medication. But phobias are treatable. People just need to seek help.
Law Mefo, your thoughts on this, you know, with regard to how individuals can, on their own, seek to manage phobia in the absence of professional help?
Think it through. You know, we say phobia is an irrational fear. Good. Then rationalize it. That's just the basics, right? Because eventually, even if you seek professional help, apart from chemotherapy, which is drugs, in psychotherapy generally, it's about counseling. It's about changing the way you think about that particular thing. Where drugs are not necessary, you should be able to help yourself. You know, sit yourself down and think that phobia situation through. This rat that I'm afraid of, what exactly is it capable of doing? You know, if you engage yourself in such talk, right, you may be able to come away with a better coping mechanism. That is one level. Another level, beyond, you know, thinking it through yourself, right? You need to act it out, right? Yes, you are afraid of heights, acrophobia, and therefore you can't fly, right? You know, how many persons you know have, you know, undertaken the same and they didn't return to justify what you are doing? So if you are able to, you know, act it out, that indeed this is not as dangerous, you know, the experience will become therapeutic. If you have a problem with social phobia, which has to do with, you know, being in social situations, parties and so on and so forth, right? Some people, when we were growing up, you know, you then in secondary school, we found out that you can't talk to a girl without having a drink, right? You understand what I'm saying? In a party, right? These are problems. But practice.
Is that shyness or phobia?
It's not. It could be both. Do you understand what I'm saying? It could be both. Because why I say it could be both, you will find that all the symptoms of phobia, are exposed when you want to engage. Palpitation, panic attack.
And you miss your first sentence.
The first sentence. You have a problem with that. You understand what I'm saying? So you practice, act it out, talk to yourself that this is not true. Active becomes believing, and believing becomes you. Do you understand that? And you get out of it. Everybody can.
Thank you very much, Law Mefo. Now let's get the final thoughts of Chinyere Goldensi. How do we manage this? How do you treat it? How can an individual who's watching right now who has any kind of phobia, what can he or she do to manage it properly?
For most people, some of their phobias don't have such a great effect on their life and their ability to function. And so what they do is they simply avoid it. So let's say things like snakes. If you're scared of a snake, you would generally just avoid it and not engage in anything that would have you exposed to that trigger of your fear. However, when it gets to a point that the person would need some care and some help, I would advise, seeking help with your mental health practitioner. The first thing they would do is probably walk you through CBT, which looks at addressing your irrational thoughts and the behavior towards your fear. And they will guide you through the process of rethinking how you understand the fear, or how you think about it, or how you interpret the fear. And in addition to that, what they can do is they can start to expose you to that fear, which is a form of exposure therapy. They can begin to slowly expose you to it and help you also think about it as you're exposed to it. In addition to that, some people like to add medication to psychotherapy. So your approach to managing it can be very different depending on the severity of your presentation and who you're speaking to. I need to add that it's not necessarily a walk in the park. It takes some time and it's difficult, but consistency can help you definitely manage your phobias.
All right, Chinyere, thank you very much. Let's, of course, listen into the comments sent in by our viewers using our Twitter handle at NTAGMN. Law Alpha C has this tweet: having a phobia is natural to every human being. For me, I exude considerable measure of confidence to wave it aside. I have a strong phobia, that's Law Alpha C now. I have a strong phobia for darkness and identified with it as I perceive it as sinister and uncanny air of mysterious insecurity and fear. And
Mike Kenyaku tweets, he says, phobia is very dangerous in human lives. It can only be managed by having enough sleep in the day and avoidance of cantankerous issues and challenges.
Dele Jack Solomon, in controlling our fears or worries, we must learn ways to relax, exercise regularly, get plenty of sleep, avoid alcohol and drug abuse, eat healthy, confront the things that have made us anxious in the past, take the fast track to relaxation and meditation through doctor's advice. We're not discussing really fears or worries. I think we said it's an irrational fear. All right, Rhoda.
Festus Akimboyewa says, overcoming any kind of phobia is possible, but it takes hard work and courage. The only proven effect treatment for any phobia is a gradual and repeated confrontation with the situation.
Another one again from Festus Akimboyewa. This is a question. Can dopamine in the brain be implicated for phobia?
Ugbochi Anthony tweets, a former Arsenal player, Dennis Beckham, had a phobia for flying, so he either goes by road or train, or they're away games because his brother died of an air crash. Died in an air crash.
Tega Williams, please ask the doctor, I get irritated by snakes. Could that be phobia as well? Well, the psychiatrist, Dr. Olushola, two questions here for you. That's irritation by snakes, and then whether dopamine in the brain can be implicated for phobia. Very quickly before we move on to our next subject.
Well, yes, dopamine can be implicated in phobias. But let me talk about the other question, because I thought...
Irritation by snakes?
Yes. Phobia is not about irritation. Phobia is about irrational fear, the kind of fear that will make the person feel they're actually going to die. they will feel that they're actually going to go crazy now if you keep them in there. If you don't remove them from there, they're going to lose it. They're going to lose their mind, or they are going to collapse, you know. So irritation is not really phobia. And, you know, of course, snakes, especially here in our part of the world, we know that most of the snakes we encounter are poisonous. So we shouldn't really just be having a lackadaisical attitude towards snakes. But phobia means that, you know, even when they say that they saw a snake 2 doors away, the person is, you know, running.
All right. All right, so that's the most that we can take on our discussion segment today. We'd like to thank all our guests who have been with us. Dr. Olushola Ephraim Oluwanuga. She's a senior lecturer in psychiatry at the College of Medicine, University of Abuja, and chief consultant psychiatrist, National Hospital here also in Abuja. Thanks a lot for being on our program.
Thank you.
Our appreciation also to Chinreugo Udense. She's a clinical psychologist and also based here in Abuja. Thanks a lot for being on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you for having me.
Lord Mefor, forensic and social psychologist, thanks a lot for your insights.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria. Nigeria had 9 gold, 9 silver, 6 bronze at the just concluded Commonwealth Games. We have guests in the studio to take a look at our performance at the just concluded Commonwealth Games, but after this break.